Welcome back to the program. I want to redefine a word today: stress. Not as pressure, not as workload, and not as competition, but as stress, something troubling resulting in essential system shutdown. And if you're in NASCAR, a driver, crew chief, owner, pit crew, you live inside that cycle every single week. Now, here's the part that most people miss. The shutdown doesn't just start in your mind, it starts in your second brain, your gut. You see, the NASCAR grind paints a demanding story. Media obligations, sponsor dinners, simulator sessions, Thursday travel, practice, qualifying, race day, perhaps multiple races and multiple series, and even more travel and recovery and repeat week after week after week. Does that sound familiar? Well, when the margins are measured in thousandths of a second, a driver cannot afford things like brain fog or slow reaction time or emotional reactivity or split second hesitation. A crew chief cannot afford cognitive fatigue, decision paralysis, stress driven miscalls, and an owner cannot afford burnout, chronic inflammation, long term cognitive decline. And yet, the entire motorsports ecosystem runs on stress. Look, the truth is, when something troubling occurs, the body prioritizes survival over performance. And that means that blood flow shifts, cortisol, the stress hormone, rises, adrenaline surges, and the body says performance now and repair later. That may be useful short term, but chronic activation leads to digestive suppression, reduced stomach acid, slower bowel motility, which leads to toxic buildup, and even fertility issues and sexual dysfunction, as well as altered microbiome balance that can lead to chronic disease. And here's the pivot: when digestion shuts down, absorption shuts down as well. And when absorption shuts down, well, the brain pays the bill. Let's talk about the gut brain superspeedway. You see, in the gut produces about 90% of serotonin. That's one of our happy hormones. It also produces large amounts of dopamine precursors and GABA signaling influence and things like secretory IgA regulation and more. And you might be wondering, why is any of that important? Well, if the gut is inflamed and stressed or imbalanced, you may experience brain fog, irritability, slower processing speeds, anxiety spikes, focus crashes mid race, poor recovery, compromised immune regulation. Now, this is not weakness, it's physiology. And the truth is, you cannot outperform a dysregulated nervous system. So there's a pattern that you may or may not see here, and this is focus erosion. Chronic stress leads to gut suppression. Gut suppression leads to nutrient depletion. Nutrient depletion leads to neurotransmitter imbalance, and that neurotransmitter imbalance leads to reduced focus and reaction time. Now, layer on top of that the travel, the irregular meals, the dehydration, high caffeine intake, sleep disruption, and the cycle tightens. High performers often think that they need more stimulation when what they actually need is restoration. So we can look at this through a high performance health lens. Over at Victory Lane Wellness, we don't guess, we assess, and we assess on a bio-individual basis. What does that mean? Well, we look at biomarkers. So these are biological markers that most PCPs, your primary care physicians and medical doctors were never taught. Unfortunately, they're trapped into a specific model of healthcare, and it's just not taught over there. They basically palliate symptoms and treat disease with the drug zap cut model. And don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-conventional medicine. There's a time and place for that. But these have been the backbone these biomarkers have been the backbone of functional testing for decades. So, the process that I'm talking about is nothing new. And what's looked at in, I don't even want to say functional medicine because that's kind of gone awry as well. Yes, they use functional testing, but in a lot of functional medicine practices now, they've taken a conventional um, strategy for a course of action, we'll say, and we'll leave it at that. So, what's looked at in integrative testing, we'll call it stress hormone patterns through saliva, mineral reserves through soft tissue in a small sample of hair, and that's not woo woo. That is that's been around for decades. Gut health markers through urine, organic acids for mitochondrial output, your energy output, inflammation levels based on omega-6 to omega-3 ratios, because you cannot optimize what you don't measure. And you know that in racing. So we're not chasing symptoms here. We're certainly not palliating symptoms, and we're not diagnosing, treating, or curing or providing any medical advice. But we are assessing the root causes with precision and rebalancing the terrain safely and naturally. And you may not even realize that some of these things are happening because, of course, everything looks normal on your lab work and your doctor says everything's great, clean bill of health. But you don't know until you start to reverse some of these things and take action on how good you actually feel after that process starts to take place. And that means restoring digestion, rebalancing minerals, supporting your mitochondrial efficiency for natural energy, regulating cortisol rhythm, and precision supplementation based on data and science. This is not hype. This is not stacks. This is pure engineered strategy. So when a driver notices increased irritability, more aggressive radio chatter, slightly delayed reaction in traffic, sleep fragmentation, nothing catastrophic, just a subtle drift. The advanced at home labs, and these can be taken right at the track as well, these reveal things like low magnesium, elevated stress hormones, dysbiotic gut patterns, inflammatory markers trending upwards. And of course, depending on the individual, within weeks or just days of strategic correction, their focus stabilizes, their sleep improves, their reaction time sharpens, and their emotional steadiness returns. Same driver, just a different internal environment. So, stress is not a badge of honor, it is a signal. And champions do not ignore signals. They run diagnostics early, they optimize before breakdown, and they understand that performance is not just mechanical, it is biochemical. So, every time going forward here, every time that you feel scattered or reactive or foggy, ask yourself, is this mental or is this maybe metabolic? Because stress, remember, stress, something troubling resulting in essential system shutdown, does not just affect how you feel, it affects how you perform. And in NASCAR, performance is everything. This is Breaking Boundaries for Champions. We'll see you next time.